All right, good morning, everybody, and especially Mormons, of whom is my target audience. But of course, everybody wants to know of the news I have to bear, especially this one, because Mormons, you're not being told this information because you listen to Fox News or the Deseret News, which is the same as Fox News, basically. They support Trump. And so you're going to miss out on this, even though it applies directly to the church. And this has to do with the Mitt Romney, Vladimir Putin connection. I was putting factor, I should put connection. Connection, because I want to put that as the title. Okay. Remember back in the day when Mitt Romney was running for president? Yeah, 2012 presidential election. I had been removed from society by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you know, the Mormons. Mitt Romney is a prominent Mormon. Utah claims him when he's not running for governor of some other state. And I guess he's got a house here that he can conveniently switch around to whenever he wants to run for office in a particular place and claim residency. And so yeah, it's apparently in my district. But that's how he became senator, is taking the place of Orrin Hatch, who was in my district. So yippee for me. But he was running for president, and in the primaries, he was picked on. And he had been on the board for the Marriott hotels, something like that. He had a controlling share or stakeholding thing, or on the board, some direct connection with controlling the activities of the Marriott hotels, you know, run by Mormon boy Marriott, the guy who embarrassed the church by going on a documentary or interview where he says that the Mormon underwear is magical. So here's this rich man, a prominent church member, saying that the Mormon underwear is magical. So that was a great day for the church, wasn't it? And so Romney, if you're not familiar with Marriott hotels, they sell pornography to their customers. I'm sure they don't now, other than through the cable channel programming as an option to add to your hotel stay package. But back then, there were still DVDs and before that VHS tapes and whatever that you can go ask at the counter to have a special evening. And so he was being picked on big time for this connection. You know, here's a Mormon boy who's allowing pornography in hotels. Hypocrisy, they called. And so they were picking on him because they knew they had got him in a bind. Nevertheless, he won the primary that year and ran against Obama. And he apparently had been interviewed either in a personal interview with a reporter or with a debate with Obama. But I think that was also the case. I found out about this because of yesterday's shows. I can't remember which one it was, whether it was Chuck Todd's MTP Daily, Ari Melber, or Stephen Kornacki filling in for Chris Matthews. It was one of those three, I'm pretty sure, who talked about it, because the news came out that Madeleine Albright had issued a formal apology to Mitt Romney for what I'm about to say. Mitt Romney was asked the question, and this, I guess, was repeated. They hammered it on him, as Obama did. He was asked, who is the greatest geopolitical threat in the world? And Romney said, Russia. And so everybody was saying, no, it's Al-Qaeda, 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 Al-Qaeda. And even Obama, Al-Qaeda. And so Obama, of course, is the one who takes credit for taking down Osama bin Laden of Al-Qaeda. And so nobody realized about Russia. They were all saying, oh, the Cold War's over, there's no threat anymore, blah, blah, blah. Well, what was going on in Russia for Mitt Romney to make such a claim? You know, it's not like just some remembering the Cold War days, but no. What was going on in Russia, it started in 2011. Russia was holding elections, and there was some kind of controversy, and the election resulted in requiring a new election in 2012 before our elections here in the States. So in 2012, Vladimir Putin finally won out and became president of Russia. No longer the USSR, that was old Russia. Putin was not a party man, he was not communist. He was not a part of the old system, even though he was KGB. That made him politically indifferent and not a part of any party whatsoever. And that's part of the appeal to the Russian people, is that he was not establishment. And so Vladimir Putin finally won out in 2012. And so then Mitt Romney comes out and says Vladimir Putin, Russia, is the greatest geopolitical threat in the world. And so, as you can tell, Vladimir Putin, of course, found out about this, and he considered that America had interfered in their elections. Sort of like the Book of Mormon Mormons. Laman is up for the presidency of the tribe, and Nephi is trying to usurp that position. He, of course, blames Nephi. And even though he became the tribal leader of those who stayed with him, he still hated Nephi for taking away those who didn't want to follow him. It's a weird phenomenon that people have, that they need to have power and authority over others. But nevertheless, this is Putin as well. Putin was furious. Even though he won, he blamed the United States for interfering in his election. Okay, so now we're going to jump forward and then go back to last summer, 2018, where the new President Nelson and his wife give a youth fireside. In that youth fireside, Sister Nelson gets up and reminisces about their trip to Russia. Remember, Mitt Romney, Mormon boy. You can see where this is about to go. They went in 2013. I had to clarify that because somebody, I had replied to somebody and had indicated that of this trip that the Nelsons had taken, and it was 2013, after the presidency elections in Russia and in America, where Obama was put on the throne here in the United States. And so, if Putin hates Romney, doesn't want Romney to win because he thinks that there was interference, because Romney is the only one saying that Putin is the geopolitical threat in the world now, the greatest one. Is it possible that he wanted Obama on the throne of the United States? Isn't that an interesting conundrum? But nobody's going back to that election to contest it. And to check the voting machines, like we were calling for in the 2016 election, but everybody refused and denied and insisted that there was nothing going on. And so now all the evidence is destroyed. Hopefully Mueller got a hold of some of it, but anyway, so Mitt Romney, he goes away, and then yeah, I guess we can go to along comes the 2016 election. Or no, I need to finish up on the Nelsons. So yeah, the Nelsons go take a trip in 2013. And during this time, in 2013, people were starting to do documentaries and coverage of Vladimir Putin and his rise to power. Putin had been a best buddy of the Bush family, and he had visited the United States. And the Bush family farmstead or homestead or mansion or whatever you call it, oil-filled house, and so there's videos out there of Vlad and Bush chumming it up, and and so here we have Vladimir Putin becomes president finally in 2012, blames American interference, but yet he still won despite the American interference which he believed happened. And Mitt Romney comes out as a Mormon saying that Putin is the greatest threat that the world has. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is centered in America. Making the connection yet, Mormons? Putin blames America. The church is an American church. Mitt Romney is an American Mormon. Catching on? And so now Nelson pulls a dumb move. This ain't inspiration from God. You do not go to Russia. You stay away during Putin. Because why? Putin utilizes the new formed Russian mafia. He controlled the oligarchs of the old empire and controlled them. He ran their organization. They were now under Putin, and they were allowed a level of wealth under Putin as long as they gave loyalty to Putin. This is how Putin works. He's KGB. He's trained in international espionage. You know, he walks with the particular limp walk that he does because of the manner in which the KGB training manual tells him to carry a weapon, carry a sidearm. And so because of all his decades of that training, that's why he walks the way he does. and he's got Russia under his iron thumb, and he's reorganized everything. It's no longer old Russia. It's new authoritarian Russia, and so he now hates America. He hates the church because of Mitt Romney. And then, from an uninspired decision, Nelson goes to Russia. Now, this would have been the president of the 12 who would have assigned this travel trip, because every Thursday at 10 a.m., which would have been yesterday, the apostles and the prophet, they all meet together in the upper room of the Salt Lake Temple above the Celestial Kingdom. And you can go to the visitor center. They have a model of the Salt Lake Temple. You can see that room where they meet. And if you are doing baptisms for the dead, right before 10, you'll see, if you're trying to get in, they'll hold you back as the security first clear a path, and then the president of the church will then go by through the baptistry and then up the elevator to that level, which you have to have a special access to get to that level through the elevator. You can't just get in the elevator and go wherever you want, whoever you are. No, there's restricted places in the Salt Lake Temple, such as in the celestial room. You'll notice that one of the doors, one of the rooms, is always closed. For the most part, there have been times where it has been open and people were able to see inside, but that was a mistake. And they try to make sure that doesn't ever happen. And you'll see a plant that is now placed in front of that door. That is the Holy of Holies. It's not the stairway that you then go into the ceiling rooms. No, that's not it. And it's not the side ceiling rooms. That's not it. No, it's a special Holy of Holies. There's an altar in there, and a big old picture of Joseph seeing Jesus in the first vision. And thus the symbolism. Jesus, or Joseph Smith, seeing God the Father and Jesus Christ as is understood as the Holy of Holies, where the president of the church, sees Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ and communicate with him, supposedly, if they had true authority. And so, yeah, whoever was the president of the Quorum of the 12 would have assigned Nelson to go to Russia. And I'm thinking that would have been Packer, wouldn't it? Should we go and Google this? So we'll find out who was to blame for this dumb move. Who was the president of the LDS Quorum of 12 in 2012? Chronology of the Quorum of 12 Apostles, Wikipedia. Okay. 2010s is what we want. Okay, yep, it looks like, no, yeah, oh, wait a minute. This isn't the chart of who, this is the apostles listing. It's not saying who's the Okay. Because Monson for a time was acting president under Hinckley, but Hinckley dies in 2008, and then Monson takes over. Boyd K. Packer becomes president of the quorum in February 3rd, 2008. And yeah, and then he dies in 2015. So it was Packer who ordered Nelson to take the trip down the Mississippi to Russia. And and so they go to Russia. Most cases they stay with a stake president at his home. Oh man, early in the morning. And then went for a run, so yeah, I'm yawning. Need to get going on breakfast and get my day going. If you don't know Putin's Russia, you got to go back and watch the old documentaries. The History Channel has the famous one that I've used in my Mormon Compromat videos. In there, they talk specifically about Putin's Russian mafia and the tactics that they have been using way back then once Putin took over. And one of the things they did is surveillance. They get everybody in Russia under surveillance. Nobody's immune. They get it in the houses. That was part of the report, is that Putin's Russia was now invading people's homes. If you're in opposition, if you have contact with an opposition, you're surveillance. And they were putting video cameras in people's homes, unbeknownst to the residents. And they were showing how these leaked videos worked, and how certain opposition members were brought down by Putin because of the altering of the videos, altering of documents, etc., but also setting people up, sending prostitutes to the houses where they've got them surveillanced. And so these prostitutes come over. Hi, I want to have fun with you tonight. You want to have fun with me? Oh, you don't? Oh, okay, yeah, we have fun. Love you long, Tim. That's a dual joke there. From a movie and from a TV show, The Office. So, I want to know, Long Tim. And so all this is going on in 2013 as Putin now takes over. And so, do you think the church is immune? Oh, God will protect him. No, you don't go in the den of lions willingly, saying that, oh, God will protect me. No, it doesn't work that way. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego are, well, yeah, they had the fire thing, the furnace. But Daniel was the lion's den. And Daniel didn't say, King, to show you that God is true, I'm going to go into a den of lions and show you that I will not be eaten. No, it had nothing to do with that. The story says that Daniel stood up for what was right and then was punished by being thrown into the den of lions to be murdered. And God then spared him. So you don't bring upon punishment yourself. You do the right thing, and if people try to attack you, God will then protect you. That's the message of the book of Daniel. Of course, it didn't work out too well for the Jews, did it? But that's why Daniel was written after the Babylonian captivity. It is an attempt to try to get Jews to remain pure and separate from the world, separate from Babylonian influence. I stray, sorry. Because the Bible is all about Babylonian influence. Their calendar, their traditions, all Babylonian influenced. So yeah, the book of Daniel was a rebellion against the new Jewish order. And then Jesus comes along and also goes against the new Jewish order. So yes, Nelson would have been videotaped. They would have kept an eye on him the whole time. His wife, maybe not so much, because they separated at one point. Nelson went to a priesthood meeting, and Sister Nelson went and talked with women and children, and that's where she comes up with her story in last year's Fireside, is that, there were 11 tribes represented in Russia. That was the story that she was telling. And so it's not likely that they were surveilling the wife, Sister Nelson, but if they need to, yes, they will get her too, so that they can blackmail Nelson, just in case Nelson at some future point can be used to benefit Russia. That's how they work. That's why I pointed out yesterday in my video that my data has been breached and my identity has been stolen and apparently is being used on dating sites and other places, perpetrating me. And so if I ever rise to prominence, those false identities will all of a sudden surface, and they'll be used against me, if I try to run for president, or if I make the national news. All of a sudden these leaked things will come out. So be watchful for that. Because again, I am the greatest threat to the church. And all these other critics, they're not a threat to the church. As much as they like to think they are, as much as they rage about the crimes and corruption of the church, they're not understanding the bigger picture. I am. See, this video, nobody else is covering this type of thing. And so, yes, Russia has recordings of Nelson, and likely his wife, in case they need a backup plan. And there is technology of altering videos to put a person's face on the body of a moving person and make it seem real. And so if for some reason a phallus pic shows up of claiming to be mine, no, it ain't no Anthony Weiner thing. Or a Jeff Bezos thing, or other prominent people who went down so know that my data has been breached, and so I can be photo altered, video altered now because of the technology we have. So just understand, it's not me, even though you may think it might be me because of the technology advancements. So I'm just waiting for that day to come. Wouldn't that be fun? But that's exactly what they've got on Nelson, because Putin blames the church because of Mitt Romney, because of America. The church is an American church. Mitt Romney is an American and a Mormon. So Putin sees both as a threat to him, the church and America and Romney. And so yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Putin had a direct influence in that election to make sure Romney didn't win. And so that's what I'm telling you guys, Mormons. Nelson has video. He doesn't have to do something wrong. There most likely wasn't prostitutes sent to him so that he gets video coverage with these prostitutes. Just the mere fact that he dared to enter their country after they blame America and the church for interfering in Putin's election, trying to prevent Putin from being elected president. It's the dumbest move in the world for Packer to assign Nelson to go to Russia. You know, under Putin, once he won the election, the church needed to block out all missionaries from Russia. You know, that's what we did in New York, when elders were dumb enough to break up a drug deal in progress, and they come running back to our apartment because we're the closest apartment to flee to, and then we're calling the mission president, and they're getting transferred out of the area in an overnight rush. and Koford shuts down that area for several months until everything dies down. There are just some things you do not do. We didn't have cell phones back then. You can't just say, 911, I'm witnessing a drug deal going on here at such and such a place here in New York. So, man. So, yeah, it was the dumbest move on the part of Packer. He should have shut down Russia immediately. I'm sorry, missionaries, you're called home. We're closing down the Russian mission, or missions, if they had multiple missions there. That should have been their first response. And because they didn't, that exposed Russell M. Nelson and his wife to Russian compromat. And isn't it interesting that Nelson now is the head of the church? Because you know, as Putin, as a KGB agent, trained in intelligence, he did his research on the church and the apostles and Nelson. When he found out they were coming, I'm sure they immediately did a cram session to say, okay, well, who's this Nelson? When did he rise to power? And who is he? And, oh, he's a heart surgeon. Okay, he saved one of the president's life, President Kimball. And then he became a general authority, most likely because of saving President Kimball's life, because it was Kimball who put him in. And Kimball ordained him first over Oakes. Remember that, Mormons. And so the Russians would have known all this. It was all public knowledge, and Russia would have known everything about this American religious leader of whom Mitt Romney was a part of both, who was their enemy. And so, yeah, they would have recognized, hey, Packer has polio, and is, I'm not sure what year he finally got confined to a wheelchair, but yeah, he wasn't intended to live as long as Nelson, who, military man and doctor, so he was healthy. He is still healthy. It's not likely he's going to die anytime soon. He may live to be 100. Who knows? You had Perry, who is not expected to live long enough, but you know, it's all a guessing game as to who's going to die when, and so who's going to be the successor to the church. You'd think that Bednar, being put in as a young boy, has a great opportunity to one day becoming president of the church, just by mere fact of the others being old enough to die before he will die. But we don't know until that day comes. But, you know, the mere fact that you have a representative of the church from America going to Russia, they get compromise so that just in case, you never know, aren't you glad you got compromise? Dial commercial, if you're not familiar with the song. And so it's an insurance policy is what it is. The compromise. It's an insurance policy. And they, certainly enough, held on to that policy. And I'm sure Russia was just ecstatic when Monson all of a sudden ends up going to the hospital after that one conference in April. I'm sure Russia was going, oh, all our dreams are about to come true. We're going to control the Mormon church. You know that's what they're thinking. They were hoping and praying for Monson to pass away and Nelson to take over. When Trump went to visit the Mormon church when he became president, Nelson and Irene took him on the tour. And if you notice, Trump didn't acknowledge Nelson. He gave recognition to Irene, because Irene was a counselor in the presidency. And even though Nelson was the president of the Quorum of the 12, Trump only acknowledged, oh yeah, you're a doctor. You know, that's cool. And but he was paying attention to Irene because he thought Irene was the head of the company, the head of the church. He didn't understand how the chain of authority worked. That when Monson is gone, Nelson takes over, not Irene. And but Russia would have known this. They would have known the succession of church leaders. And so when Monson was dying, the Russians were cheering. And they had compromise on Nelson that they could use once Nelson took over. And I find it extremely curious that when Monson was sick in bed, he had Alzheimer's, he had diabetes, he was dying. And the church is claiming, oh, we don't do nothing without his approval. They have stamp signatures. It's not his actual signature. And so there was some fraud going on in the church in this transition moment period, right before Monson died and Nelson took over. All of a sudden, all these changes were being announced when Monson was bedridden. All sorts of changes. Couldn't he wait until he dies? No, they were doing it right before he dies. And Mormons, you didn't catch it. You were just saying, oh, okay, Monson approves it, that's just the way it is, because they say so. They were usurping Monson's authority to get things done before he died. And then when Nelson took over, boom, he laid the hammer down. He started altering the church, taking away members' exaltation, because you have to be a high priest. That's why you go through the temple ritual, is to become a high priest. The laying on of hands is the official designation of high priest. And the church, of course, denies women that, and therefore women are given exaltation by virtue of being married to a high priest. And so Mormons don't understand that, because the church has altered the doctrines and the scriptures and all that. And so Mormons didn't catch it when Nelson announced it, that the high priests were now going to be elders. They will retain their title as high priest, but there will no longer be a high priest group. They're now elders. And so all elders will never become high priests unless they are able to weasel their way into leadership positions in the church. But with a limited number of positions, very few will ever be high priests. And so that was not all. Then Nelson comes out and says, hey, we're doing away with home teaching. Home teaching is gone. And I guess visiting teaching too, maybe? I'm not sure. Women have always been visitors. They love to socialize. So that was never under threat. But the priesthood have always had trouble with home teaching. In the majority of wards, the percentage of home teaching is next to nil. High priests are always better than the elders, but yeah, there was a need for some kind of change because people aren't getting visited. But Nelson said, okay, we're no longer visiting. We're going to establish this ministry program, but you don't need to report it. You don't really need to see them. You know, if there's ever a problem, they'll let you know, and then you can take care of the matter. That's now the new program. Our ward's not practicing it as they were intended, per se. I've never been visited. And just last month, now that it's March, the guy who was assigned to be my minister, or one of my ministers, Phil Smith, didn't come along. It was just the guy's family, his wife and young daughter. And they gave me some cookies with hearts on them for the Valentine's Day theme. And that's it. I haven't heard from him since. And I, of course, am never going to call. But and of course, Philip, he's never going to call. He's never going to follow up. So yeah, the church no longer visits their members anymore. I'm sure, even though West Valley has over 300 now that are no longer active in the church, 300 inactive, less active, as the church wants it to be called. Unbelievable. You know, 300 is enough for 2 wards outside of the United States and Canada. It's enough for 2 wards here in the United States and Canada, because I believe I think it's 300 anyway, but usually once you get around 300, they split you up, so that it would be 150 for each, depending on the number of elders that each ward would have. And so yeah, I don't know if you fully grasp what's going on, Mormons. With Nelson taking over and all of a sudden making drastic changes, life, eternal altering changes. If you can't see the background of all of this, I don't know what else to tell you. Because in April, guess what else Nelson did? He announced the Russian temple. He didn't have a place designated. They don't always do. He said yet to be announced. It still has yet to be announced. But that's Russia's tactic. When you do business with Russia, they want you to do things for them first. That's the Russian mafia. You do not do business with Russia now. Under Putin, you cannot do it. because they will get compromise on you. You will have to funnel money, launder money for them. This is what they've done to Trump, but this is what they've done to the church. And sure enough, when the two other apostles die and they replace the two apostles, or was it with Monson and Hales? Yeah, I guess it was those, when Hales and well, yeah, because I guess they didn't replace Hales because he was on October 1st when he died. So I don't think they had time to replace him. Let me... list of LDS apostles. According to Wikipedia, I want all general authorities. List of members of the Quorum of the Church. No, this is not the one I had before. 21st century. Okay. Bednar was 2004. Cook 2007. And Christofferson 2008. Nielsen 2009. Rasband 2015. Stevenson 2015. They don't have a picture for him. And Runland 2015. See, that was awesome. We had a tetrad, blood moon, 4, and between number 3 and number 4, or 3 and number 4, 3 LDS apostles die. The third one was the morning of Saturday session of April conference. Mormons, do you not get this? That's so unbelievable. Alright, so here we go. Gong and Soers, March 31st, 2018. So who did it replace? It must have been Hales. So let's go back to the 20th century. Irene Holland, Hales. Yeah, October 1st, 2017. And yeah, March. So, yep. It must have been on the Sunday. That would have been Sunday then. That's why they couldn't replace them, that conference. And so the 31st of September, or the 30th of September, would have been Saturday session. Okay. So, yeah, I was right. Hales and Monson dying required Gong and Soers. Soers was interesting because when you look at him, he was an investor in Brazil. So you think, oh, the church is now trying to be more diverse by letting other nation culture people come in, the other ethnic groups. I'm sure they're entertaining in some way. That's one of the Mormon racist beliefs that they have, that other ethnic groups are fun and entertaining. You know, that's racism, Mormons. You don't treat other cultures as fun and entertaining. But, you know, during the Jungle Fever days, Mormon girls were going, oh, he's so funny. I want to date him, Mommy. We're getting married. You know, and the church has had problems with that, with Brigham Young saying, you know, no Straying off topic, sorry. And we're at 50 minutes here, because there's more. And so, yeah, Nelson comes out and says, hey, we're building a temple in Russia. And then it's exposed that, hey, the church is doing investing, like the guy in Brazil did for a living. After he was put in, the church is now caught with LLC companies taking unknown money of $32 billion after they announce a temple in Russia and other places, but Russia. This is what Russia does. You want a temple in Russia? You need to do some things for us. Here's some money. Invest the money. The money is dirty money. And what they're asking the church to do is invest, in other words, money launder. And not good for the church, Mormons. And yeah, I just look at Trump. But when I can't remember his name, but Trump needed a Secretary of State. He dined with Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney turned turncoat, and everybody saw it. Everybody was like, what are you doing, Romney? You hated Trump. You vehemently attacked him during the campaign. What are you doing? You're sitting down to dinner with him, smiling and giggling, laughing. What are you doing with him? Well, Trump wanted him to be the Secretary of State. And we found out later, not on Fox News, not in the Deseret News, we found out later that Putin, through his worker, his employee, whoever, the Russian mafia, the ambassador, when Trump met with the ambassador in secret, and we found out because the Russian news covered it. You know, and if you want to know what Trump is up to, just go to the Russian news. They'll tell you all about what Trump has done with Russians. And so Trump was ordered, do not put Romney in Secretary of State. You know, it wasn't just because Putin hated Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State. It was Romney. And that's the reason why, is because Romney, way back in 2012, when Russia's election was believed to be tampered with by America, Romney said, Russia, Putin, is the greatest threat to the world. And so Romney was out. And so Rex Tillerson, that's who he is. Rex took over instead. Because Rex had just been awarded a medal in Russia. And so that was sort of the cover. I want this guy. You put him in Trump. Yes, master. Yes, master. As you wish. And so that's why Rex was in. But then, of course, Rex was not loyal to Russia nor Trump. And so now Rex is gone. And I don't know, Pompeo, I guess, is the one. Or, no, yeah, Secretary of State is Pompeo. Chief of Staff is, yeah. Oh, man. So now are you seeing all this, Mormons? Are you seeing the connection? So, if I'm the greatest threat to the church because of all that I know, all that I'm exposing about the church, that critics aren't even understanding. If Russia is using the church now, if Russia controls the church. Those who are the church's enemies are now Russia's enemies, because the church is run by Putin. That's very clear. When Nelson made the announcement, and then he tries to say, there's going to be a lot of rumors and speculation, so don't watch the news. Oh? And then he kept reiterating it. And then he tried to get law changed in Utah so that people can't record phone conversations and bishops' interviews. And yeah, church is trying to silence people now. And why would they be so focused on that, other than, you know, people coming out with recordings? But guess what they've got on Nelson? They've got recordings that was done to Nelson unbeknownst to Nelson. And as a result, Putin, Russia, is holding it over on the church in order for them to get a temple in Russia. And as I've done the stats video, there is no justification for a temple in Russia. There's not enough members. And so it's very clear that when Nelson took over, the Russians met with the church. You know, calling on the hotline or however they did it. They said, hey, we understand you're new president of church. How would you like a temple in Russia? We can make this happen. We just need you to do some things for us. Oh, you don't want to do it? It's not enough money? We will help you with the money. This is what you want you to do for us. We will give you the money. You will invest it. This is how they do. This is their playbook, guys. The church is compromised. They are controlled by Russia. And that's all because of Mitt Romney. And Packer for being a dummy and not shutting down Russia. Calling home the missionaries, closing down that mission. You know, this isn't just a mistake. This isn't a human error. This is devastating to the church. So I hope this gets attention, because a lot of my videos that are long, people have trouble listening to. There's some of you, IMD, and who are able to listen to the end because of the way they have things done. But having hour-long videos all the time, every day, makes it tough for people to catch up. And so I don't know if enough of you are listening to the end here. But yeah, all of the changes is because of Russia. The church was collapsing. They were going to do the right thing and cut corners. They were closing down visitor centers and other places that were just not necessary and were a cost burden on the church. Because when you lose 13 million members because of the internet that they put in the gospel topic essays on themselves, where they say that Brigham Young's a racist, where they falsely accuse Joseph Smith, if you go and watch my polygamy video series, they falsely accuse Joseph Smith of sex with a 14-year-old girl. That was the dumbest thing to do. They should have stuck by Joseph Smith, saying that those reports were lies. You know, that would have been the truth. But in order to claim that they were lies, you have to take down Brigham Young again. Not just for racism, but for polygamy. So yeah, that's what happens. If you're not authorized to lead the church, The church will collapse. It's inevitable. It's like building your house on sand. That has to do with authority. Because the rock upon which you shall be built is my church. So that's where the primary song comes from, Mormons. And the church is collapsing. So, alrighty. I guess we're done. That's it. That's the Romney-Putin connection. There are people up and making lots of noise at 5:50. Something's weird going on. So, alright. They better allow me to do my laundry. This new guy better not take over just because he thinks he's new. So, alrighty. This is a sad day, Mormons. This was what you were warned about. A test is coming. That's the test. That you will find out that the church is not true, and that it ended up being compromised by Russia. And so now you're faced with, where do you turn for the gospel of Jesus? Because it's not the church anymore. It never was. And so now we have no authority on earth, no church, unless, but you guys don't want to listen to those videos.